I'm Mindy and I'm back. And today we're going to talk about INFPs and ENFPs and that confusion that many of us ENFPs face often. We take tests and then we get sometimes ENFP, sometimes we get INFPs, and we're all confused, right? But it seems like INFPs are not that confused about it as ENFPs are. Well, I am in this journey of MBTI for about a year now. And I think I've been the most confused, or my biggest confusion of all the times has been that, am I an INFP? So first thing that I want you to stop considering from now on is the normal concepts of introversion and extroversion, which says that if you're a lot at home, then you're an introvert. If you are a lot outside, you're an extrovert. Because that can be more far from accurate. Maybe sometimes that's connected to the real sense of introversion and extroversion, or according to Myers-Briggs. But it's not all that it's implied, right? So I'm going to talk about my own personal case. So why I have had that doubt about me being an INFP, it's because I am not the typical extrovert who is all the time at parties or seeing friends a lot. I'm a lot of the time alone, on my own, by myself. And I actually need that time in order to process information, in order to get to absorb more from the books I read, from the movies I watch, from the people I talk with as well. But I cannot just go and talk with a lot of people because that drains me and I need kind of time to be down. So actually I spend the most time alone than with people. That is just my life and that works perfectly fine for me. But if you think of a typical sense of extroversion, like I don't know, ES type, for instance, or another EN that is more extrovert, like, I don't know, an ENFJ, for instance, maybe you will notice that they have this kind of more constant need for being out and about and doing like the regular social things, right? That is like meeting a lot of people or doing social things and stuff like that. But we ENFPs, we are not like that, or not all the time. So because you're a lot of the time in your house by yourself doesn't mean that you are an INFP. So what we have to look at, it's not as how much social contact you have with people or not, but it's about the first function of the two types. What makes the INFP an introvert is an FI, introvert feeling, and what makes an ENFP an extrovert is NE, extrovert intuition. Okay? And this doesn't have much to do with being social. Like, even more clear than this, I have a very clear INFP friend who is way more social than I am. She does way more things like in a social environments that I do, and she is a very INFP. So putting that aside, let's pick up back the first function. So what makes the difference? What makes a person an INFP or an ENFP is the first function. So what is our dominance? Is our dominance this explorative kind of nature for kind of uncovering a lot of information around us, understanding the world, this need of being soaked in new information and kind of trying to discover what the world is about. Not only the world, but everything. Like, even for me as an ENFP and my first function being an extrovert intuition, I'm all the time, not all the time, but almost all the time reading about MBTI because I'm trying to build up my own concept and I'm trying to understand things. And I might not be like soon after that, like ready with the new concept, but that's why I need to get more information. And so I have more data from where I can connect the dots and build up an understanding. And that is like where I thrive. That's just my pure main thing. And why is this extrovert? Because this pushes us for getting external data or impulse, it's external, information is a word, that will help us to navigate like more information. So external inputs, that's what we need. So for instance, something that an extrovert intuitive would do would be like going out on a walk or going to sit on a bench, like to a park and a bench, sit there and observe the world. We might not know why we're doing that, but we just need to see how people is walking, how people is looking at each other. We might put on some music in our headphones and we start to imagine like that the whole world is a dance that moves throughout the music in our ears, something like that. Where does that need come from? God knows, but it's just like an impulse of being exposed to that kind of information that we have. Or for instance, as I said before, just now, reading a lot of books, but like the extrovert part would be like sitting outside, or seeing friends, but we want to we want to have this soundboard. We tell people what we are thinking, or the concept we're trying to understand. We say it, and so by saying it, just by talking, not by what they're going to say or reply back, we would understand ourselves better. But this is a natural thing we do, okay? So that's like kind of like trying to make it sure how extrovert intuition works. And then that's the dominant. But the dominant introvert feeler, that is an INFP, will be someone who is really in touch with their feelings. Someone who knows what they need and who they are, they know their core values, they know their core motivators, they know that they want to do certain things because of this and because of that. ENFPs might not know that. So we might do things, we might need to go to sit at that bench at that park, but we don't know why. We don't know what is there behind. So the ENFPs, the INFPs on the other hand, they know a lot of things. And that's what makes them introvert, because they're in touch with their inner selves, not because they are all the time in their houses. Although it can be true that if you are in touch with your feelings, then you might notice that you need more downtime. So that's maybe the correlation, but it's not always a rule. And so this person will feel, will have it clear what they want, whatever. And that's like, they're always in touch with that, kind of. Or that's at least what I've learned from INFPs. They know it, and the ENFP is a bit lost. And so here comes the second part of this whole explanation, is what the auxiliary function has to do here. So auxiliary function is the second function, is the co-pilot. So pilot is like what we are at our core. Not only at our core, that's what we are. So ENFPs are extrovert intuitives. And so it's like more exploratives and more about, as I said before, understanding the world and having ideas and navigating ideas. And the INFP is more about what's happening inside of me. What do I need? What do I want? And it's more like self-centered, like more in the self-focused. But then the second function makes these two individuals slightly different. As I said, second function for INFP is the FI. And second function is not the most developed function. It's actually what we should actually aim to master in order to becoming our fullest self. So as an ENFP, that should be using FI, introvert feeling, in order to make decisions. So I can have all of that desire to explore the world, blah, 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 but then I should filter with FI. And that doesn't come easily to us all the time. We can feel and we might know what we kind of want, but we cannot take actions upon it because of our NE. We might need a lot of time in order to come up with an understanding, with a full understanding of what is that we need or what is that we actually want. What is our core value, what core needs, what is our truth self? What does our truth self want? that requires a kind of a soul searching type of journey in order to know. It might sound complicated, but yeah, it requires some introspection. But the ENFP can be true BC with finding new information and finding new experiences, and because that's what our NE wants us to do all the time, but we don't filter through our FI. We go directly to our third function. That's the TE, what makes us actually go and do whatever we think NE wants. So we skip the FI. If you do this process I'm doing, you, my friend, you are an ENFP who is just spending a lot of time by themselves, probably just as I do. And what happens with INFPs is then they know what they want, right? This is their main thing. Like, they're feelers, they're full in their body, they're full in themselves. They know they need to write, they know they need to spend time in nature, making music, whatever. They can be very artistic as well. So they know this, but then NE will help them to kind of explore the possibilities on how can they do that, to come up with the plan. So it's a co-pilot. It's a function that will help them to actually use this properly, the FI properly. But they can also skip that part, and instead of using that part of, okay, all of the possibilities and ideas and plans that I can do with this feeling I have, they can go directly to SI. And what SI do with them is that they procrastinate, and they prefer to go the old ways, and do something that is already known. Like, oh, I want to, let's say the INFP wants to make a piece of music. Like, they have this desire, they're musicians, and they want to create a piece of music. But in order to create this piece of music, they should learn how to play the piano or the guitar. And they have to find a way and start to, like, using NE in order to understanding how can they do that. Well, because they don't, when, like, long functioning, I'm saying, like, no long functioning. Actually, this is actually how our kind of nature works. We don't go to auxiliary when it's something new, and we go directly to SI. They go directly to SI. So then what they would do is, like, they would think, yeah, it would be nice to do it, but I prefer to just go and watch a movie. SI, they know, this is what I know, this is how I do things always, this is what I just need. Actually, I'm just going to do it this way. And that ends up looking like procrastination, when in the very end, they're suffering inside because they might be happier if they actually put hands on and start working on the NE, so they can come up with a very structured plan, so they can actually unfold and execute a plan through SI, which is a very hands-on function. So that's like skipping the second function. So you notice how if you use your first function and your third function, the way I'm saying, you're either an INFP or an ENFP if you're skipping the second function, because that's like our nature. So actually, this is something that it's a subject for another video I'm going to make. It's like the auxiliary function is not our piece of cake. It's not easy. It's not what we always do, as many YouTubers say out there, or as many people in the community, MBTI community say. That's not true. The auxiliary is what we should be using in order to be full. Because if we use these two first functions, the third function will be working efficiently, and we will fall less in the fourth function and the negative part. So it's like all of the four functions unlock themselves if you use correctly the first two. So just to wrap this up, if you're an ENFP or an INFP, do not look at how much time you spend alone or with people. Look at what your main function is. Is your main function FI or is your main function NE? Is whatever supports your main function NE or FI? So whichever of the two functions you do not use that much, be sure that that is the clue to determine which type you actually are. And that's how I determined that I am an ENFP and not an INFP. Definitely not. And the more I read about INFPs, also the fourth function, you can also look into that. That's the TE for INFPs, and for ENFPs it's SI. You can also soon help yourself to understand which one are you. And INFP's last function is TE, and the way it manifests for them, it seems like they go into this anger episodes, and they cannot control their emotions. They just go bonkers on people. And they can also be manipulative. That's why they kind of have these anger episodes, or these yell at people and all of that. But I don't feel identified with that. Like my super kind of low functioning mode for me is like the super critical mind. It's like beating the self up. It's like being afraid that you're never going to be able to reach perfection. It's like for ENFPs, the stress is like a low, like you feel depleted. And for INFPs, the stress is like high up anger and high up. It's like that introvert person becomes like super bossy and powerfully angry. And the ENFPs is like this outgoing person and more like explorative person becomes this powerless person that is so scared and afraid of what the people is going to think or what they're going to do with what he or she has to do or to say. So that's I think another clue. So I hope it was of help. Subscribe to my channel, and every week I'm posting at least one video per week, and my average is 2. So I hope to see you soon, and see you.